Yay! We finally got to the end of this crap. Hello and welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about the final story in the K9 spin-off series. The Hound of the Korven and Eclipse of the Korven. Written by Sidney Armstrong and S.P. Klaus, and is directed by Mark DeFrance and David Napier. This is the two-part conclusion to the series. Unless you go by the Wikipedia page, then this is the last two of a five-parter. However, when you actually watch the episodes, they don't actually connect very well. The story seems to, the final episodes of the series seem to completely contradict one another. It's really strange, it's really bizarre. But we're finally here. We can finally judge the series as a whole. And what does this series do? How does this series end? Was it worth it? It was it. It was alright. It was nothing. It wasn't horrible. It wasn't the worst thing I've ever seen. Doctor Who has clearly done some worse stories. Love and Monsters, Orphan 55, The Idiot's Lantern, Fear. All, of course, were a lot more terrible, and even in the series itself, Regeneration was just an absolute mess. Another episode which I can't even remember the name of, but it's it could clearly have done a lot better as well. The story is a really strange one. The first episode in this two-parter, Hound of the Korven, is very unique in Doctor Who's titling of the series. Usually, when you have something of the monster, Destiny of the Daleks, Revenge of the Cybermen, the Sontaran Stratagem, stories that have the monster's name in the title, you would expect the monster to actually appear. The Korven do not make an appearance in the Hound of the Korven. I actually really like that idea. That's really cool. But it seems like it's like, because you constantly expect, you go to the title, you're like, right, you're going to expect this for them to appear, like a twist at the end, but they never do. And I remember I just watching this and I was like, what? They didn't appear at all. Though the title still kind of actually makes sense when we get into they are influenced into the plot. They are mentioned, but they just don't make an actual physical appearance. So, yeah, the first episode sees Thorn actually try to interact with our crew. Basically, he proclaims that he actually has a piece of technology that K9 needs. It's actually his memory circuits. He has K9's memory circuits. In exchange, he wants his regeneration technology, which was first seen in the first episode of the series Regeneration, in which K9 can basically put himself back together despite any form of damage. Really interesting stuff right there. It's basically the core that keeps him together in some sense. Thorn tries to make a bargain by getting Darius to basically to push forth by threatening essentially his father. He basically shows his father in the virtual prison in basically a white endless void where he's going to be imprisoned there for, I believe they say 20 years. It is nice to see Harry Pike return to the series in a little cameo in the next episode. It does establish that story is important in some regards, because this story again kind of contradicts certain things. We'll get into that, and it seems really strange. The build-up of this series is really bizarre. We'll get onto that when we talk about the main villains, the sort of main villains in the first half of the episode, in the first half of the story. And essentially, Thorn can make it so that his virtual prison is a lot less depressing. He could turn it into like a lovely, like forest-like environment where his father could be happy. If not, he will be tortured in this white endless void with no sounds, nothing for the eye to grab onto. He will just go completely insane in this virtual prison. So Darius has this kind of core to try and get K9 to work with Thorn into making this exchange. They make their exchange in the sewers like they always do in this series. With actually, I believe this scene is this particular location is actually from the Lost Library of Onyx. That bit when they first make a bargain. So this is basically the bargaining room. And so Thorn makes the deal. He gives K9 his memory circuits back. K9 gives him his regeneration cycle. Darius actually turns around and says, no, you cannot give him this. Even for my father, it's not safe. If he has your regeneration ability, you will be completely vulnerable to any threats that have come against you. But K9 is like, I love how K9, he just doesn't care about Darius' father. He's like, thank you, Sir Master, but I'm not actually doing this for your father. I'm doing it because I need my memories back. Thor didn't have to threaten Darius' father. That's really funny. But when K9 gets his memories, actually, it's kind of strange. He proclaims he gets his memory circuits back. However, nothing actually comes from his memories. He doesn't learn or gain new information, or just has even an inkling of his memories. It seems like really the memory circuits have had this sort of virus, something that Thorn might have put into it, which means that K9 has been basically triggered as a bomb. It will see a particular target, which K9 doesn't know at the moment, and when he sees the target, he will self-destruct, killing him. Without his generation cycle, he will not return. A similar thing happened in the first episode of the series in Regeneration. However, because he had the regeneration cycle, he can revive himself. And so you have this dilemma where K9 is basically, he's got to go around, he's hunting down, he doesn't really know what he's hunting down, but he knows that basically his brain has this mission. He cannot countermand it. While Starkey and Georgie basically tried to reason with them. It's like, no, you're not part of the programming. You're a real life living being. You can prevent this. You can stop this you can stop yourself from self-destructing. But it turns out that Thorn has actually scheduled this meeting in the sewers at a particular time where the department were actually trying to block off it because they want to put a sleeping gas in there to actually harm any aliens that they have tracked down there. They've tracked down certain aliens to the sewers, so they leave our crew vulnerable in a sense. And so Starkey gets separated from Georgie and Darius, who later on get founded by Georgie's mother, and she is absolutely shocked. She was told that there were no civilians down in the sewers and that there won't be any civilians. However, not only does she find civilians, she finds her own daughter in it. So she basically goes to the department. She goes to, he talks to Thorn, and it's just like, this is unacceptable. I will not accept this. Thorn basically is like, this doesn't come from my department, my command. This comes from high above. This comes from Lomax, the leader, the controller of the department. But George's mother basically claims to even Lomax, no, I disobey your orders. We are not sending out those sleeper chargers yet until it's completely safe. Why Starkey finds a Jinxon from the first episode, the first two episodes, the big crocodile-like creatures that were advertised throughout the series. They actually make a return here, or at least a single one. Now, they treat this like a massive surprise. Earlier on in the episode, you see them, there's a bit of goo on the wall, and Starkey and Georgie quickly realizes that it's Jinxon, that spray that they do, the Jinxon goo, which they use to track down their prey. And they act like it's a massive surprise. Wait a minute. Wasn't in the last episode it starts with Darius finding Jinxon material? Why are they what did that have to do with anything if they weren't going to bring it up? What was the point of that scene in the previous episode? I thought, knowing seeing that they're going to appear in this is that was going to be like foreknowledge. You know, characters are going to be like, oh my god, that information we found, it tracks it down to here. Or, right, we knew that they were here, we've already made plans, we've already made establishments. No, the fact that they found Jinxon material quite recently is never brought up. It's really strange. The stories in the last 5 episodes seems to have teased stuff, element stuff, which will play further into plot elements. Those elements are in the story in later episodes, but they're not actually paying off from the teaser. It's really strange. I don't understand it. But this comes out to one of the most humorous moments where the Jinxon actually takes Starkey to its lair in the sewers, and we learn that it speaks English. It's actually stay down on in the sewers reading Earth's books, and has actually developed the human language, though it does occasionally get its words mixed up. Instead of saying host, it says it's a horse, and instead of saying allies, it says something else, which I can't remember. That's mainly where the humour comes from. We also learn that the Jinxons aren't actually bad guys, in a sense. They're actually a sort of refugee race that were in a war with another race, and that war and their opponents in this war were actually getting benefited by an advanced alien technology that wanted to wipe Jinxon out. This advanced alien, highly advanced alien technology, this race that tried to help the extinction of the Jinxon was the Korven, and basically we learn that through this Jinxon that they actually got K9, they hacked into its systems, and it's become a powerful weapon against the Jinxon. And the reason why it killed them at the start of the first episode is because of this programming, essentially to kill and destroy any Jinxon it's in its path. Basically meaning that in the first episode, K9 was the bad guy. Think of it like that's just... I don't know if that actually works well in terms of how the first episode plays out. I honestly, even though I'm doing this in marathon, it's only been like a while since I previously watched the last episode, I honestly can't remember a thing about it. So whether this plot twist actually works well in terms of what we know in that story, no idea. So Kanan is actually tracking down the Jinxon, and the Jinxon is actually a friendly being, and Starkey comes up with the idea that they should meet and talk and try and reason with K9. And K9 sees the Jinxon and is about to set off, whilst George's mother gets involved, and they basically try and organise a peaceful agreement with Georgie's mother actually seeing that, like, right, the Jinxons are actually good guys. This is a strange day for planet Earth. And the story then kind of ends with the first episode ends with Starkey basically is like, K9, we've stopped, we're going to stop you. They basically reason with him to try and stop his programming, to overwrite his programming. There's a little joke, K9 keeps counting and then says bang as a joke, showing the humour side of K9. But this, of course, leads into a cliffhanger, which Thorn, which I'd like to add, is in a clearly CGI background, which is really strange because you actually see him in a real-life setting in next episode, basically holding K9's regenerating ability and proclaims that it is there for the ultimate project. He has the final piece to create his ultimate project, which will see the end of the world, essentially. And that is the first episode. And you would think, going by the story, going by everything we've learned, the Jinxon will become a huge part in the next episode. The Jinxon never appears again. He does not appear in the final episode, despite them building it up that, like, the Jinxon are actually the good guys, and they're going to have this war with the Korven and the whole battle. The Jinxon don't actually return again in the second half of the story. The The only tie-in really to the last episode is the regeneration ability. It's really strange. It's really bizarre. We also just there's a lot of these elements in the story that seems like it's teasing up something. What it's teasing does actually happen, but it has nothing to do with the actual teaser. If that makes any sense. It's a really strangely bizarre series. No wonder a lot of people turned off this series quite early on in its run. But the second episode, I'm gonna say, David Napier, who directs the second episode, does a bang job here. There's a lot of great shots here. There's a lot of great experimenting in terms of the directing. We actually get a lot of different locations. We get completely new shots of the department, and we actually see what's that building in Sydney, Australia? They actually go there, which, oh no, it's not. It's the O2, I believe. Actually, I tell a lie. I think it's the O2 Arena, and the story actually starts off with the vortex machine, the time machine that Griffiths has worked on. It actually is sending off a signal, and it seems to be connecting with another technology on Earth, which we learn quickly is that it's a department and it's Thorne's specific place in, and something is happening with it, and it will destroy the Earth in 20 minutes. But K9 has tracked down something. He claims that what he will need to do will take less than 20 minutes. He will go off, fly off, and he will come back, to which he tracks down Thorne, who has activated a sort of signal of sorts to try and make a deal with K9 to gain back his regeneration abilities. But it turns out that Thorne is actually, he's basically laid a trap for K9. He essentially has harnessed all the aliens that the department have captured and turned them into one genetic monster, as we get introduced to the super soldier, the Trojan, this horribly CGI'd creature which makes no impact in any way, shape or form. They build this up as this big monster, this big creature that the crew have to defeat. But the main threat seems to, of course, still be the Korven. And we quickly learn through Thorne that there's going to be an invasion. There's going to be an invasion on Earth, and he basically tries to get K9 to help him stop this invading force. Something that K9 has in his computer system will use the vortex to basically destroy the invading army that's coming through the vortex. We also learn that because Thorne has Darius has learned about the vortex on the other side. So he and Georgie and Darius basically go. No, sorry, Starkey and Georgie go. Darius tries to track down Georgie's mother, who's actually basically been demoted into an office job where she looks absolutely miserable. But she gets a really cool scene in which she gets a massive gun and destroys 2 Robocoppers. So this story is really action-packed for a K9 episode. We also get a scene in which Georgie and Starkey hold hands and they start kissing, which is supposed to be a conclusion to their relationship of sorts, but I never bought it from Starkey's perspective. He did not seem interested in her in that way in any episodes that we have seen so far. Georgie, fair enough, but Starkey? It didn't seem like him. Also, Darius doesn't even get a mention in this love triangle that the series has been developing throughout the series. It just comes out of nowhere, and it's like, right, we kiss, we now a couple, and we're off. That's it. We'll get back to the episode. And the final episode actually kind of builds up really well in terms of its atmosphere, as we essentially learn that the department run by Lomax is actually a Korven. The invasion, Thorne doesn't want to stop the invasion. In fact, he wants to help it develop. As you see, he's not actually human. He's actually an alien race which we have seen in a previous episode, but I can't remember the name of. And Thorn essentially wants to help the Korven take over planet Earth. As we get an army, and it turns out Lomax is a Korven, and his department is essentially makes it easier for them to control the Earth. We also learn that there's this great moment where, in terms of the plot, where they're like, the vortex will not stabilize; it will destroy the Earth. But then Thorn is like, unless Griffin can fix it, he will risk his machine to put in the stabilizer, which he's seen earlier on in Angel of the North. That will be tie into this, and that the Korven can now take over if the vortex is stabilized, which Griffiths can now do. Again, doesn't really tie in very well, but the fact that they brought it up is interesting. And the Korven basically trick Griffiths without them even being there, without him being aware. So he stabilizes the vortex, thinking he has saved the day, but in actuality, he stabilized the vortex so the Korven can actually make an invading force quite easily on Earth, as all humans have to now get killed in the department, leaving Darius and Georgie's mother in a cool action scene for the K9 series, in which they have to escape the department's building to try and get to Griffith. But Georgie and Starkey use K9 to send a signal to Griffith, in which they basically explain that it was a trick and you have to turn off the machine. But Thorn basically points out that he cannot. The only way to stop the vortex is if he was here in the building saying out the deactivation code. And you know Griffith, he has a fear of the outside world. He's basically trapped himself in his own house. And we get this really powerful scene, something which would be akin to a Russell T Davies era Doctor Who moment, in which Griffith basically, he makes a message for himself, and he is like, right, I am strong enough, and my family are more important, not my actual family, though they are important to me, but this new family with Starkey and Georgie and Darius and Georgie's mother, as he opens the door and he leaves his house. And you can kind of see him like struggling as he's stumbling around in the outside, and he gets to, again, what I believe is the O2 Arena, and he actually finds himself there. He stumbles, he's in a very weak state, he's absolutely petrified, but he does it because his friends matter to him the most. As he activates the deactivation code, and the Korven invasion is postponed, it stops, the vortex is apprehended, and so it leads only for Thorn's Trojan super soldier to basically be the main threat. I love how the Trojan kills Thorn, though I do wish that Thorn would have become a much more, he was one of the better things about the K9 series. His villainous persona might be really cheesy and corny, and is more akin to the 60s Batman series. He is a very fun and enjoyable villain for the series, so it was kind of a bummer that he had to die. But K9 realizes his batteries are weakening. He's basically got low levels left. He doesn't have his regeneration ability. If he dies now, that's the end of it. But he uses his last energy source to send out a call, specifically a Jinxon call, which two genetic parts of the Trojan are basically, they're in opposite. One hears the Jinxon as it's part Jinxon and tries to kill anything that's not Jinxon, and the other part of him is the Jinxon's prey, which have used this signal to basically flee. So it's battling with itself. It kills Thorn and then explodes in a vast arrays of things. Very anticlimactic, very sad. You get this really sad scene in which they believe that K9 has died, and our characters say goodbye. Starkey, Georgie, Darius are all crying. Really, really empathetic shot, and you really actually think, oh my god, they're actually killing K9 in his own series. Maybe they knew that the series would not continue for a second series at this point and decide, what the hell, let's kill off the character. That would have been a really ballsy move. And it does play long enough that you genuinely feel like it. And it is a really powerful moment. And David Napier's directing here is really strong in this moment. However, Starkey realizes that the regeneration cycle pod, the part that makes the regeneration ability, can essentially teleport itself to Starkey's hand, and then it disappears. All our characters go around Griffiths' house trying to find it, only for K9 to be resurrected, and the story ends with our characters all laughing as K9 says affirmative to the camera, breaking the fourth wall, as he flies around, seemingly in a new, slightly altered design. I could be wrong, but it seems like now he's got like his collar that returns from his design when he was with the Fourth Doctor. So, I don't know, it just looks slightly different. I could be wrong here. The idea of the regenerating cycle is that he changes whilst he, like the regeneration of the Doctor, he changes slightly. So, I don't know, I need to rewatch that scene again, but it looks like he gets a new design. And that is Hound of the Coven and Eclipse of the Coven and the K9 series overall. How was it? It was alright. It was a lot of great build-up, there's a lot of great fun, exegetic moments that really makes this story above and beyond of most K9 stories. However, the story itself is still pretty weak and still pretty mundane. I like the build-up, the action of it, the more expense, and just the fact that it has a completely different visual. Like, we got lovely new shots of different buildings, different environments, but it's still not strong enough. Leaving the story on still a kind of a bummer note. Probably one of the most easily the most epic, and clearly you can see the budget all went into that final episode. But in terms of writing, it's still K9. And out of the series as a whole, was it worth it? In some ways, I actually believe there are a lot to like about this series. I do like how the majority of the villains are practical effects. I do like that even if the costumes really don't look well put together, and like the lips don't match up, they look really silly, you can clearly tell they're people in suits. I do like the fact that the series does try to give it a much more realistic tone, not realistic, but a much more authentic tone with practical effects. The K9 design overall is, actually when you watch this series, you kind of get used to the new K9 design. That is a cardinal sin, I know, but I will admit as the series went by, the design didn't bother me that much. But in terms of writing, it's always been weak. Our main characters go from pretty alright to mostly forgettable. With the standout, in my opinion, being Georgie, who does have a kind of a storyline, a story arc with it. Starkey in some episodes comes off as really unlikable, and at best, just a generic kid who likes his robot dog for the series. Darius has, again, some really interesting moments and is really fun in certain times. Again, most of his episodes, however, come off as really bland and generic. Griffith has a really great development. He has his fear of going outside. I can't remember what the phobia is called, but he basically has a fear of leaving his house. And his idea with his family, which do actually get really great episodes dedicated to him. But the character, in terms of the overall, in terms of every episode, he's just the typical professor of the series role, more akin to Doc Brown to anything, like a much less interest in Doc Brown. I do like the concept of the department, however the series clearly didn't have the budget for it. And I don't know. I was expecting a lot worse. I was expecting to really just rant about every episode. Though there are episodes clearly to rant about. The series itself just kind of got a shrug off me. But I'm glad I kind of watched it, just mainly because now, after watching this episode, because I have seen every Doctor Who episode and spin-off after this, now that I've seen the story, I've officially watched every single televised Doctor Who story that has ever existed up until the point that I'm making this. That is mental. That is mental. So, yeah, I guess I've achieved enlightenment and I have fulfilled my purpose. But of course, the marathon, of course, continues. So, yeah, Hound of the Coven and Eclipse of the Coven. Alright. And the K9 series as a whole, it's alright. And that's all I can really say about it. So, join me next time when the Doctor plans to go on a date with his beloved River Song. However, nothing really works out as well when you're a time traveller. So join me next time for First Night and Last Night. And I'll see you next time on the Doctor Who Marathon. Ta-da!